I had been married to Jessica for 7 years. We started out so happy, but lately things had grown cold between us. The first red flag came when I noticed she was frequently meeting with lawyers and locking her phone. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach when I discovered she had been researching divorce laws. After finding evidence of her divorce plans, I made the decision to protect myself before it was too late. Before I tell you how I discovered my wife's scheme, let me know where you are watching from, and hit like if you think I made the right choice. Do not miss this unexpected ending. My name is Boston, and at 35 years old, I had built a comfortable life as a software engineer with a 6-figure income. I met Jessica at the tech company where we both worked. She was in marketing, brilliant and captivating with her quick wit and warm smile. After dating for a year, I proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe. The sunset reflecting on the water created the perfect backdrop as she said yes with tears in her eyes. Our first 7 years together were everything I had hoped marriage would be. We bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, traveled to 12 countries, and supported each other as we climbed our respective career ladders. Jessica eventually moved to a prestigious marketing firm while I became a senior developer at my company. We had our routines and rituals that kept our connection strong. Sunday morning pancake breakfasts, Friday night movies, surprising each other with small gifts for no reason at all. Our friends called us the perfect couple, and I believed it too. We had plans to start a family soon and had even begun discussing converting one of the spare bedrooms into a nursery. But about 8 months ago, subtle changes began to appear in our relationship. Jessica started working late more often, coming home after 9 or 10 at night without much explanation. When I would ask about her day, her answers became vague and dismissive. The woman who once shared every detail of her workday now offered only, "It was fine," or "Nothing interesting happened." Then came the phone behavior. Jessica, who previously had never been particularly protective of her device, began taking it everywhere with her, even to the bathroom. She changed her passcode and positioned the screen away from me whenever she received messages. Once, when I walked into our home office, she quickly closed her laptop and appeared startled by my presence. What troubled me most was her sudden interest in our finances. Jessica had always been somewhat uninvolved in our money management, happy to let me handle investments and retirement planning. But now she was asking detailed questions about my stock options, our property value, and my retirement accounts. One evening, as I passed by our bedroom, I overheard Jessica on the phone speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, I understand the procedure," she said. "And what about the assets? How does that typically work?" When I entered the room, she quickly ended the call, claiming it was just a work conversation. My suspicions reached a tipping point one night when Jessica forgot to log out of her email on our shared computer. I had no intention of snooping, but a subject line caught my eye as I went to close the browser, Family Law Consultation. The email was from a law firm specializing in divorce cases. With a sinking feeling in my chest, I noticed several other emails from the same firm. I did not read them, but their presence alone confirmed my growing fears. Something was very wrong in our marriage, and Jessica was making legal preparations without my knowledge. Around this time, Jessica also began spending more time with her friend Karen, who had recently gone through a bitter divorce. I overheard fragments of their conversations about starting fresh and taking back your life. In context, these phrases took on an ominous new meaning. One afternoon, while searching for a document in our home office, I came across Jessica's browser history on our desktop computer. She had visited multiple websites about division of assets in divorce, how to claim house ownership, and hiding assets from spouse. My heart pounded as the evidence mounted. The final confirmation came when Jessica accidentally left a small notebook on our kitchen counter. Inside were handwritten notes about my assets, our joint properties, and what appeared to be a divorce strategy. There were calculations of what she thought she could claim, notes about timing, and even the phrase "best-case scenario," followed by a figure that represented roughly 70% of our combined net worth. Standing in our kitchen staring at this undeniable evidence, I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. The woman I had built a life with, whom I still loved deeply, was methodically planning to leave me and take as much as she could in the process. I tried to convince myself there must be some explanation. Perhaps she was just exploring options due to some temporary unhappiness. Maybe this was her way of processing some conflict she had not shared with me. I attempted to initiate deeper conversations, asking if everything was okay between us, if there was anything we needed to discuss. But Jessica always deflected. "Everything is fine," she would say with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Just stressed about work." Each denial only confirmed my suspicions further. Sleep became elusive as I lay awake, night after night, replaying our recent interactions and wondering where things had gone wrong. Had I been inattentive? Had I missed signs of her unhappiness? Or was there something else? Someone else? Perhaps driving this sudden change. The uncertainty was paralyzing. I felt trapped in my own home, going through the motions of normal life while carrying this heavy knowledge. Each morning, I would kiss Jessica goodbye as she left for work, all the while wondering if she was heading to meet with another divorce attorney. As my suspicions grew, I decided I needed more information about what Jessica was planning. I checked our shared calendar and noticed blocks of time marked simply as meeting with no additional details. By cross-referencing with our credit card statements, I discovered charges from 3 different family law firms over the past 2 months. Jessica had been consulting with multiple attorneys, likely shopping for the one who would offer the most aggressive strategy. While organizing files in our home office, I found a spreadsheet Jessica had created, listing all our assets, our house investment accounts, retirement funds, even items like my grandfather's watch and the artwork we had collected during our travels. The spreadsheet included columns for estimated value and target percentage, with most items marked at 60 to 70% in her favor. Most alarming was the discovery that Jessica had been quietly moving money out of our joint accounts. Small transfers at first, amounts I might not notice, but they added up to over $20,000 over the past 3 months. The transfers went to a bank account I did not recognize, presumably one she had opened without my knowledge. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I found evidence of Jessica's relationship with Jackson, her former coworker. Text messages revealed they had been meeting regularly for at least 4 months. "Miss you already," one message read. "Cannot wait until we can stop hiding," read another. The betrayal cut deep, adding another layer of pain to an already unbearable situation. I needed someone to talk to, someone I could trust with this sensitive information. Frank had been my best friend since college, the best man at my wedding, and one of the most level-headed people I knew. We met at a coffee shop, far from my neighborhood, to ensure privacy. "I cannot believe Jessica would do this," Frank said after I showed him some of the evidence. "She always seemed so straightforward and honest." "I thought so too," I replied, staring into my untouched coffee. "But the evidence is overwhelming. She has been planning this for months, Frank. And she has been seeing someone else." Frank placed a hand on my shoulder. "You need to protect yourself, Boston. This is not just about emotions anymore. This is about your financial future." Taking his advice, I discreetly scheduled an appointment with Alan Williams, a well-respected divorce attorney. I chose a lawyer in a different part of the city than any Jessica had visited to reduce the chance of word getting back to her. "Unfortunately, what you are describing is not uncommon," Alan said after hearing my situation. "In high-asset divorces, the spouse planning to file often tries to position themselves advantageously beforehand. The good news is that you have discovered this before she filed." Alan explained my legal rights and the concept of equitable distribution. He also outlined steps I could take to protect myself that were completely legal and ethical. Document everything he advised. Keep records of all financial transactions, evidence of her moving assets, and anything related to her relationship with this other man. But most importantly, do not confront her yet. The element of surprise is your only advantage right now. I also consulted with a financial advisor who specialized in divorce cases. She helped me understand our complete financial picture and identify vulnerable areas that needed immediate attention. The most painful discovery came when I found Jessica's personal journal hidden in a box of her winter clothes. I had never invaded her privacy this way before, but under the circumstances, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was facing. The journal detailed her dissatisfaction with our marriage, her growing feelings for Jackson, and her explicit plan to start fresh with a significant portion of our assets. Alan says timing is everything. One entry read, "File when Boston least expects it, secure the house and accounts first, then negotiate from a position of strength." Another entry outlined a timeline for the divorce, with a target date just 3 weeks away. Reading these words written in my wife's familiar handwriting triggered a storm of emotions. Anger surged through me at the calculated betrayal. How could the person who had promised to stand by me be plotting so methodically to hurt me? The woman who had once looked into my eyes and promised forever was now strategizing how to take what we had built together. The pain cut deeper with each new piece of evidence. Late at night, I would find myself looking through photos from happier times, our wedding day vacations, holiday gatherings with family, trying to pinpoint when things had changed. Had she ever truly loved me, or had our entire relationship been building to this betrayal? Anxiety became my constant companion. I lost weight as my appetite disappeared. Colleagues commented on my distracted demeanor at work. Each day was a performance as I maintained the facade of normalcy around Jessica, all while knowing what she was planning. With Alan's guidance, I began implementing a careful strategy to protect myself. First, I secured copies of all important financial documents and stored them outside our home. I recorded detailed information about all our assets, account numbers, property deeds, and investment portfolios. Next, I legally moved a portion of my personal assets, namely, inheritance money from my grandmother and bonuses earned before our marriage, into secure accounts that Jessica could not access. These were funds that would legally be considered separate property rather than marital assets, but which Jessica had included in her calculations of what she expected to receive. I documented the timeline of her affair with Jackson, gathering evidence that would be relevant in our divorce proceedings. I was careful to ensure all my actions were completely legal, following Alan's advice to the letter. The goal was not to hide assets, but to properly identify and secure what was legitimately mine while preparing for an equitable division of our shared property. Throughout this process, I maintained a calm exterior around Jessica. I continued our normal routines, never letting on that I knew about her plans or her relationship with Jackson. Each day was an exercise in restraint as I waited for the right moment. As the days passed, Jessica became bolder in her preparations. One afternoon, I returned home early from work to find her carefully wrapping some of our more valuable items in bubble wrap. When I asked what she was doing, she claimed to be just organizing, but I noticed later that several small art pieces and family heirlooms had disappeared from our home. Jessica also began changing passwords on our joint accounts without informing me. Our shared Amazon account, streaming services, and even our home security system suddenly required new credentials. When I mentioned these changes, she dismissed them as security measures or claimed not to remember changing anything. About a week before her planned filing date, according to her journal, Jessica suggested we take a weekend trip. "You have been working so hard," she said with unusual warmth. "Let us go to that lakeside cabin you love. Just the two of us, no distractions." The suggestion immediately raised red flags. The timing aligned perfectly with her plan, and I suspected she wanted me out of the house for a specific reason. Perhaps to move more items, meet with her lawyer, or even have Jackson over. I agreed to the trip, but told her I would need to check my work schedule first, buying myself time. That evening, I overheard a phone conversation that confirmed my worst fears. Jessica was in our backyard, speaking in hushed tones, unaware that the kitchen window was open. "Everything is on track for Friday," she said to the person on the other line, who I presumed was either Jackson or her attorney. "Boston has no idea. By the time he figures it out, the accounts will be secured and the papers filed." She laughed softly. "The look on his face when he realizes he has lost everything will be priceless." That moment crystallized everything for me. The woman I had loved and trusted was not just leaving me, she was taking pleasure in the thought of hurting me. Something hardened inside me, replacing the pain with resolve. 2 days later, Jessica orchestrated what she clearly intended to be our final conversation as an intact couple. She waited until after dinner, poured herself a glass of wine, and said the words, "I had been expecting Boston, we need to talk." I sat across from her at our dining table, noting how she had positioned herself near the light to appear more vulnerable, a technique I had seen her use in difficult client meetings. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice carefully modulated to convey sadness. "I am not happy anymore, Boston. I have not been for a long time." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I think we should separate," she said, watching me closely for a reaction. "I believe we can do this amicably like adults. No need for things to get messy." Then came the proposal I had anticipated. She would keep our house since I work from home, more the majority of our investments to compensate for your higher earning potential, and even my grandmother's antique jewelry collection, which was always meant for your future wife anyway. In return, I would get generous visitation rights to our dog, some of our newer furniture, and what she called a fair portion of our remaining assets. She had even prepared preliminary paperwork which she slid across the table toward me. I let the silence stretch between us as I looked at the documents without touching them. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "Is that all?" I finally asked, my voice calm. She blinked, clearly thrown by my lack of emotion. "Boston, I know this is hard to hear, but I think deep down you know our marriage has run its course. We want different things now." I met her gaze steadily. "Different things like you and Jackson building a life together using assets from our marriage." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about? I know everything, Jessica." The consultations with divorce attorneys, the secret bank account with $20,000 of our money, the spreadsheets dividing our property, the timeline in your journal, and of course your relationship with Jackson. She attempted to recover shifting strategies instantly. "You have been spying on me, going through my private things. That is a violation of my privacy." "No more of a violation than planning to strip me of everything we have built together while maintaining the pretense of a loving wife," I replied. "Did you really think I would not notice the changes in your behavior? The late nights, the locked phone, the sudden interest in our finances." Jessica's facade cracked as she realized her carefully constructed plan was collapsing. "You do not understand," she stammered. "Our marriage was already over. You were never home, always focused on work. Jackson actually listens to me, appreciates me. I have all the text messages, Jessica. The ones discussing how to maximize what you could take from me. The ones with Jackson planning your future with my assets." She switched tactics again, tears now streaming down her face. "I was unhappy for years, but you never noticed. I had to protect myself. I slid my own folder across the table. By stealing family heirlooms, by planning to clean out our accounts before I even knew we had problems. That is not protecting yourself, that is theft." Opening the folder, I showed her copies of the documentation I had gathered, the legal steps I had taken, and the evidence of her affair. "I have secured my separate property, documented your attempts to hide assets, and gathered evidence of your relationship with Jackson. Everything I have done is completely legal and transparent, which is more than I can say for your actions." Jessica's expression transformed from tearful to furious. "You think you are so clever. My lawyer will destroy you in court. You will regret this, Boston. Your lawyer, Timothy Roberts, or perhaps Sandra Fleming, or maybe David Chen. You have consulted with so many, it is hard to keep track." I watched as her eyes widened at my knowledge of her legal consultations. "My attorney has prepared a fair and equitable division of assets based on state law. No tricks, no hidden agendas, just a clean and honest separation." "You cannot prove anything about Jackson," she countered weakly. "I do not need to. This is not about punishing you for the affair. This is about ensuring a fair outcome for both of us. The evidence only matters if you try to continue with your original plan." For the first time, I saw real uncertainty in Jessica's eyes as she realized her leverage was gone. The careful scheme she had constructed over months had been dismantled in a single conversation. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Exactly what I just said. A fair division of our marital assets conducted with honesty and transparency. You can still file for divorce, Jessica. That is your right. But it will proceed according to the law, not according to the plan you and Jackson created." Jessica left the house that night, presumably to stay with Jackson. As I watched her go, I felt a complex mixture of sadness for what we had lost and relief that I had protected myself from what could have been a devastating financial and emotional blow. True to form, Jessica filed for divorce 2 weeks later. However, with her original strategy compromised, the process unfolded very differently than she had planned. Rather than being blindsided and disadvantaged, I was fully prepared with legal representation and documentation of all our assets. The court appointed a neutral third party to oversee the division of property, and Jessica's attempts to claim my separate assets were quickly dismissed based on the evidence I had gathered. Her lawyer, ultimately David Chen, attempted to characterize my actions as hiding assets, but my complete transparency and documentation proved otherwise. Throughout the proceedings, mutual friends were forced to choose sides as the details of Jessica's plan and her relationship with Jackson came to light. Many were shocked by her behavior, having believed as I once did in the image of our perfect marriage. Others remained neutral, unwilling to judge either party in what they saw as a private matter. After 6 months of negotiations and court appearances, our divorce was finalized with a settlement that reflected an equitable division of our marital assets. I retained my separate property, including my inheritance and pre-marriage investments. Our house was sold with the proceeds, divided according to our respective contributions to the mortgage and upkeep. Our joint accounts were split evenly after returning the funds Jessica had previously transferred out. The day the divorce was finalized brought a strange mix of emotions. There was grief for the end of a relationship I had once treasured, anger at the betrayal I had experienced, but also relief that this chapter was closing. As I left the courthouse for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the burden of deception and pretense finally gone. The following months were not easy. I moved into a small apartment, surrounded by boxes of possessions that represented half of a shared life. Nights were the hardest, the silence of an empty home amplifying my thoughts and regrets. Questions haunted me, particularly whether there was something I could have done differently to save our marriage before Jessica turned to Jackson. Friends and family became my lifeline during this period. Frank checked on me regularly, often showing up unannounced with takeout food and a willingness to listen. My sister Amy flew in from Chicago for a week, helping me organize my new place and providing the comfort only family can offer. I also found support in unexpected places. A colleague introduced me to a divorce recovery group that met weekly at a local community center. There, surrounded by others navigating similar journeys, I found a space to process my emotions without judgment. Listening to their stories helped me realize I was not alone in my experience, nor was I defined by the failure of my marriage. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life. I established new routines that were solely mine, reclaiming old hobbies that had fallen by the wayside during my marriage. I started mountain biking again on weekends, joined a local book club, and even took cooking classes, determined to expand beyond the 5 dishes I knew how to make. Work became another form of therapy. I threw myself into a challenging new project, leveraging my technical skills to solve complex problems. The focus this required gave my mind respite from constantly replaying the past, and the success I found rebuilt some of the confidence that Jessica's betrayal had eroded. As months turned into a year, I moved from simply surviving to actually living again. I purchased a modest but comfortable townhouse, decorating it entirely according to my own preferences, a freedom I had never experienced in our shared home. Each decision, from the color of the walls to the arrangement of furniture, represented another step in reclaiming my independence. The most unexpected development came when I ran into Jessica at a mutual friend's wedding, approximately 14 months after our divorce. She looked different, somehow less polished, perhaps with a weariness around her eyes that had not been there before. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, and then, to my surprise, she asked if we could talk privately. In a quiet corner of the venue's garden, Jessica offered what seemed to be a genuine apology. "I handled everything wrong," she admitted. "Not just the end, but long before that. I should have talked to you about my unhappiness, instead of plotting behind your back." She went on to share that her relationship with Jackson had ended just 3 months after our divorce was finalized. "He was not who I thought he was," she said with a bitter laugh. "Or maybe I was not who he thought I was once the excitement of our affair wore off." I found myself able to listen without the searing pain that would have accompanied this conversation a year earlier. Time and distance had granted me perspective that allowed me to see our failed marriage as a shared responsibility, even while recognizing that her method of ending it had been unilaterally wrong. "I hope you find happiness, Jessica," I said as we prepared to rejoin the wedding reception. And I was surprised to discover I truly meant it. That encounter marked a turning point in my healing process. It helped me release lingering resentment that had been occupying valuable space in my heart and mind. I realized I had been carrying anger not just toward Jessica but toward myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for not somehow preventing the pain that followed. Looking back now, I understand that my marriage's end, while painful, taught me invaluable lessons. I learned the importance of staying vigilant and protecting myself even in relationships built on supposed trust. I discovered that emotional intelligence is just as crucial as financial or professional success, and that communication must be prioritized above comfort or convenience. Most importantly, I learned that while betrayal can break your heart, it does not have to break your spirit. The careful steps I took to protect myself financially allowed me the freedom to heal emotionally without the added burden of starting over from nothing. Today, 2 years after discovering Jessica's plans, my life looks entirely different than I could have imagined. I lead a team of developers at a new company, live in a home that truly feels like mine, and have relationships based on genuine transparency and mutual respect. I no longer view my failed marriage as a scar, but as a necessary chapter in my story, one that ultimately led me to a more authentic and self-aware version of myself. Sometimes the most painful endings pave the way for the most meaningful beginnings, as long as you find the courage to walk through that door. If you have ever faced betrayal or had to protect yourself from someone you trusted, share your experience in the comments below. What warning signs did you notice? How did you handle it? Hit the like button if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that surviving betrayal is possible. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest peace.